It started with tacos and a tiny disaster. I asked for mild, you heard smile, and the chef heard wild. So our first date became a fire drill with napkins and laughter. If you're searching for overcoming language barriers in relationships, you already know love can burn brighter than words. But clear words help the heat feel like joy and not a test. On the walk home, winter air nipped our cheeks and made each breath look like a thought bubble. We tried again, slower, pointing at the sky and the street signs like we were drawing a map that only we would use. That night I learned something honest. Love is a translation project with a heartbeat. The next morning, we invented a rule. If it's important, show it and say it 2 ways. A tap on the wrist with left saved us at crosswalks, and a hand over the heart meant, I'm with you, even when the sentence wobbled. We laughed at our own subtitles and kept going. Whispered hearts. English was born for moments like these, where romance meets the craft of communication. Humor made room for courage, and courage made room for listening. You realized that language isn't only sound, it's tempo, eyes, hands, and the split second before a smile. Sometimes the most fluent sentence is a cup of tea placed in front of someone who didn't ask, but needed it anyway. But there's something even quieter teaching you both how to love. Every misheard word hides a tiny invitation to slow down and pay attention. If you accept the invitation, the room gets warmer. Have you noticed how a pause can say, I'm here, even when your vocabulary is still packing its bags? Research shows that couples who build rituals around talking feel safer over time. Therapists report that when meaning is clear, you don't need perfect grammar to be understood. You felt that truth on the subway, shoulder to shoulder, as the train rattled your thoughts into short, true lines. The simplest words carried more weight because you chose them together. You began to see how differences can deepen connection. Your partner's language kissed the edges of words you thought you knew, and yours gave theirs a new angle of light. You watched them hunt for the right verb and loved them for their patience with their own mouth. Have you noticed that trying is an accent your heart never wants to lose? A curiosity crackled between you like a spark. What if the gap isn't a wall but a workshop? What if every almost is a blueprint for closeness you wouldn't have built any other way? What would change if you treated your language gap as a teacher instead of a test? So you started building. Mornings became a 5-minute language date at the kitchen counter with toast crumbs and a notebook that smelled like pencil shavings. Afternoons had a rule. 1 voice memo per day in the other's language. No judgment, just love. At night, you left a sticky note by the sink with a new phrase and a quick drawing so the meaning could find you before coffee. What tiny daily practice would make your mouth braver tomorrow? You learned to choreograph your hands. A thumb to the door meant home. A swirl in the air meant later. And 2 fingers tapping the table meant listen, this matters. Nonverbal fluency kept stress from spilling when the right word hid behind your tongue. It also turned ordinary moments into secret signals only you could read. Food became a whole dictionary. We labeled jars and spice tins with both words and a small sketch, and suddenly the kitchen felt like a language lab wrapped in cinnamon. One night you burned the garlic and we added oops to the wall, right between stir and dance. Language grew roots in smells, textures, and the way steam fogged the window when the soup hit a boil. You found joy in a rule that softened every hard moment. If a phrase broke twice, you reached for the feeling instead of the grammar. Tired became low battery, and jealous became my chest is loud. Feelings carry fewer syllables and more truth. Which feeling could you say with one small image today? On a spring afternoon, the rain made the sidewalk shine like new glass. You split a cheap umbrella and practiced a silly tongue twister until it collapsed you both into laughter. People stared and then smiled. You weren't embarrassed. You were busy turning a public street into your classroom. What's the funniest line you've learned that still makes you crack up? Technology helped, but you used it like a seat belt, not a driver. Translation apps got you through city offices and unfamiliar recipes, with a rule to say it out loud afterward so your mouths didn't forget the work. You saved favorite phrases as audio so you could hear each other's progress. Even the bloopers turned into affection you could replay on tired nights. But there's another doorway you didn't expect. Language is culture, and culture is a house full of stories. The first time your partner translated a joke that made no sense in English, you asked for the story behind it instead of the perfect words. Their eyes softened. You weren't asking for grammar. You were asking for the room where the joke was born. Every week you hosted a 5-minute story trade. One person told a memory in their first language. The other paused and asked for landmarks. Who? Where? Why did it matter? You built bridges with questions, and the answers became furniture you could sit on together. Love started to look like a room you both decorated, one sentence at a time. Not every day was sweet. Summer brought heat and a hard argument about nothing and everything. A missed word stacked on a missed tone, and suddenly the kitchen felt too small for all the feelings trying to fit. You remembered what works when tempers climb stairs faster than you do. Repair became 3 steps you could do even when hungry. First, you touched fingertips for 5 slow breaths so your bodies could remember you weren't enemies. Then, you translated feelings instead of facts. I felt invisible when I couldn't find the word. I felt alone when the joke got lost. Finally, you made a small plan. 10 minutes of quiet, then we try again with one topic. Which tiny repair could you keep in your pocket for the next storm? Autumn arrived with the hush of leaves under your shoes and a notebook fat with progress. You circled a weekend for your first all-day language experiment at home. Breakfast in one language, dinner in the other, and a free-for-all in between. It wasn't perfect, which is why it worked. Perfection makes a brittle bridge. Practice makes a flexible one. You built a museum of mistakes on your fridge with doodles and captions. Butterfriend, instead of boyfriend, got a gold star. I like your breath, instead of bread, earned a silver heart. Visitors laughed and added their own slips, and your house became the kind of place where trying was louder than teasing. What missaid phrase deserves a frame at your place? Family visits asked for new courage. You learned greetings by heart and practiced with the rhythm of a favorite song. You told your partner's parents the sentence you'd rehearsed on the bus, and their faces lit like porch lamps at dusk. Respect travels fast when you speak even a handful of words with care. Community helped too. You found a weekend language meetup at the library and traded recipes along with verbs. A neighbor taught you how to say borrowed and return after you awkwardly kept a rake for a week. You started hearing your partner's childhood in the cadence of other voices. The city turned into a teacher who never charged tuition. Meanwhile, your private games kept fluency playful. Sticky note scavenger hunts hid verbs behind cabinet doors. Karaoke nights forced your mouth to move at the speed of music, which made normal sentences feel lighter the next day. You set a timer for speak without switching and rewarded yourselves with the good chocolate once the buzzer rang. But there's a layer even deeper than words. Listening has a shape, and you learned to mirror it. When your partner slowed to find a word, you slowed your breath to match. When they nodded before they understood, you paused until the nod turned real. The pace of kindness is the mother tongue of every home. On a winter evening, when the apartment windows wore halos of frost, you tried something brave. You wrote love notes in both languages, even if one looked like a toddler's first draft. You taped them to the inside of kitchen cabinets, so surprise could do its gentle work. Coffee mugs and spice jars started ambushing you with affection. You set expectations like fences that keep joy inside. Correct me only if I ask became a gift on tired days. Cheer for effort, not accuracy, kept your kitchen warm even when a sentence tripped. And every Sunday you checked the map, not to judge, but to notice how far you'd walked without seeing the miles stack up. Language errands turned into dates. You practiced ordering coffee for each other, tipping with a thank you that made the barista grin. You asked for directions even when you knew the way, just to let your mouth practice being brave with strangers. Courage is a muscle that prefers daily walks over sudden marathons. Sometimes you role-played the hard stuff, calling a doctor, meeting a teacher, explaining a delay to a landlord. You wrote short scripts with blanks and traded lines like kids in a school play. When the real phone rang, you weren't fearless. You were ready enough, which is the kind of ready that usually wins. Your playlists became tutors. Driving at night, the highway lights made a necklace of gold dots as music filled the car with simple lines and clean verbs. You learned prepositions by singing them, which felt like cheating and worked like science. The chorus you couldn't pronounce in March rolled off your tongue by June. Midway through a hard week, doubt came back and tried to rearrange the furniture. That's when whispered hearts. English matters most. Not as a brand, but as a bench you can sit on with people who know this path. You are not the only ones slipping on syllables and getting back up smiling. If belonging could talk, it would say, "Keep going." The words will meet you halfway. When friends asked why you keep at it, you told them the truth. Being understood in two languages feels like widening the doorway to your shared life. Future kids can run through it without ducking. Grandparents can enter without knocking. Your home grows extra rooms where joy can sleep over. Sometimes you wrote your day as a comic strip with speech bubbles in both languages and stick figures that looked like eager spoons. The point wasn't art, it was memory. Drawings glued the words to your brain in ways flashcards never could. You kept the strips in a shoebox because progress loves proof. You also made your phone an ally with guardrails. Notifications in your partner's language nudged you without scolding you. You changed your weather app first, then your calendar. Small swaps kept panic low and practice high. Even the words "mostly sunny" became a daily tutor. Language leaks into the rest of life, and that's good news. When you choose patience with a sentence, you're more likely to choose patience with a mood. When you wait for a verb to land, you're more likely to wait for a feeling to pass without saying something you don't mean. Closeness grows where hurry gets replaced by care. You turned holidays into vocabulary adventures. Labels on ornaments, bilingual playlists, and a toast that traveled warmly from one language to the other made the room feel taller. Elders added slang that textbooks forget, and the kids in your life corrected you with glee that never felt unkind. Traditions multiplied without getting crowded. When travel finally came, the airport felt less like a maze, and more like a test you had quietly prepared for. You checked in, asked for aisle seats, and found a snack without pointing like you were playing charades. The announcement you once feared became a puzzle you could mostly solve. Confidence didn't crash down, it accumulated. You treated setbacks like rain delays, not cancellations. A new tense twisted your mouth. An accent sent you into the weeds. You shrugged, laughed, and tried again after lunch. The point was never mastery. It was intimacy. It was the feeling of your partner's hand finding yours when a word went missing in public, and you both decided that the world could wait. Some nights you read children's books out loud to each other because the sentences were brave and small. You learned the word for moon and the word for mess, and both felt like a kind of home. You underlined lines that could double as vows. Simple doesn't mean shallow. It means clear enough to hold when everything else is loud. By the time spring came back with that clean green smell, your house had new sounds. Timers announcing practice sprints. Pens tapping on paper while you hunted for a phrase. Blenders roaring over breakfast smoothies while you tried a joke you'd been saving. It didn't feel like homework. It felt like building a room with extra windows. You promised each other a future where the languages keep swapping places at the table. Some months, one will lead the dance. Some months, the other will. The goal isn't symmetry. It's welcome. It's the look on a guest's face when they hear a word from their childhood land safely in your living room. You set a community rule for yourselves. Learn one new phrase from a neighbor, a barista, or a bus driver every week. People love being teachers when the lesson is their life. You learned spare change and save room for dessert, and your dog is a gentleman. Your city turned friendlier because you gave it new ways to talk back. All along, your love life kept learning a lesson language teachers know. Progress is sneaky. It hides in the days that feel ordinary. Then one afternoon, at a park bench under a tree that rained yellow leaves, you overheard a conversation and understood enough to smile. No diploma, just a quiet medal pinned by time. So here's your gentle dare as summer rolls in with its late evenings and screen doors that thrum like guitar strings. Pick one habit that feels light enough to carry every day. Voice memo confessions, sticky note nouns, kitchen karaoke. Let it shepherd you through the weeks until you don't remember how you started without it. Keep the humor. Keep the signals. Keep the courage to say again with a grin. And when miscommunication slides into a moment that stings, go back to the steps that steady you. Touch, breathe, translate the feeling, and pick one tiny action you can do before the kettle boils. We're glad you're here, learning how love can speak in several keys and still sound like one song. Whispered Hearts. English is your companion on the commute, in the coffee line, and on the porch at dusk, when you practice the soft syllables that carry the biggest truths. Tell us in the comments the sweetest phrase you've learned in your partner's language, and teach someone else a word they'll love to say. On your next walk, let the neighborhood coach your mouth while your heart does what it already knows. Smile at the mistake. Keep the sentence moving. Make room for the pause that lets meaning catch up. There's a right now joy in being understood a little more than yesterday. When the room goes quiet and the lights settle like calm birds on a wire, read the note you left for each other by the sink. Then write a new one. Tape it next to the mugs, so morning has something kind to hand you. Translate it out loud, once for practice and once for love. In time, you'll look back and see what you built. A house where jokes live in 2 languages. A kitchen where spices and verbs share shelves. A life where you can say, I'm sorry, I'm proud, and I'm home in more than one way, and mean it every time. That is the quiet victory you've been walking toward. As you keep going, remember the promise that started under a cheap umbrella, a hot taco, and a winter sky that made your laughter steam. Keep building the bridge with notes, looks, and hands that know when to help a word over the water. This is the gentle art you're mastering. This is the work of overcoming language barriers in relationships, and you're already good at it.